You're listening to the Business and Life Podcast, where 7 days a week, proven entrepreneurs share their success stories, failures, and give you true value on how you can build a great business and an awesome life. With your host, Mike Olivas.
What's happening, guys? Today we're chatting with James Williams, who's a high-performance coach, and he believes once you understand and trust the scientific truth and that you can rewrite the energetic flow of your internal system, what is possible for you is only limited by your imagination. All right, James, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking the time. Now, tell our listeners something a little about yourself and also where you're calling in from today.
So I'm calling you from Los Angeles, California, but as a lot of your listeners might hear, I'm not from the USA. I'm actually from London. And so I've actually only been in the USA since September last year. I'm a performance breakthrough coach, but it was only 5 years ago that I was at the tail end of a 12-year career in television. I was actually a visual effects artist, very different job. And personal development and performance were a personal lifestyle choice, not an area of mastery. Taking mentorship into a professional career was something that I was called to do, having kind of just not been happy in a corporate career. And so, 5 years in, now living in Southern California, working with my wife and individually, we both do the same kind of thing. And as challenging as life can be at the moment, things are great. Things are exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Southern California, I love it. Near and dear to my heart. I've spent 12 years up until last year, before I moved to Puerto Rico in Newport Beach.
Fantastic.
So definitely awesome. And I know I know it's definitely crazy during the pandemic right now, especially in Southern California, where the population is crazy and the numbers have been crazy. So let's talk a little bit about that. But first, tell me a bit about your company, the Growth Edge, and what it is that it does, what kind of value it brings to your clients in the marketplace.
Sure. So, just a bit of a background. So I got into high performance coaching mainly because when I left my career in television, I started working with my wife and her company, which is iheartmylife.com. Now, she has a company for female entrepreneurs, builds a lot of amazing coaching programs and business building programs. And I really jumped on there whilst I was training to be a high performance coach. And what I was seeing, first off with my wife, and secondly with a lot of other business owners, is that this drive and this kind of like need to be successful leaves out one crucial point. And it's the reason why a lot of new businesses go bust so soon. And it's that they don't really pay attention to themselves. They don't pay attention to the business, what I like to call the business within them, right? The systems and structures that make their delivery excellent, rather than waiting for the external strategies to be the thing that creates their success. And so I saw this and it really lit something up in me, because initially I wanted my wife to survive and be healthy and be happy creating the thing that she loved and not be burnt out by it. And so I got certified as a high performance coach in 2015. And since then, I've really been just fascinated by everything that it takes for a human being to perform. So I work on what I said is the business of you. So anything that is what happens before you leave the door, before you work on your business or there for your family, I work on what can we do to make ourselves thrive mentally, physically, and spiritually, so that we know we're actually giving 100% to the people that deserve it, and to make sure that when we're showing up in our businesses, we're making the best decisions. We're pivoting, which is really important right now. And we're not getting freaked out too easily. We're bouncing back quickly, because I truly believe that if you know how to bounce back, and if you know how to thrive and deal with mental stress and deal with physical stress, then there is actually nothing that can throw you off too much. That your ability to be successful is actually fairly easy, because you can just keep going.
I want to follow up with that. That's a really good point in terms of paying attention within the business, or the business within yourself. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I know a lot of people right now talking about pivoting, and that could be something where a lot of people are either out of work, they just lost their job, or they're having, and I like to say, as the optimist that I am, they have the unique, hopefully excitement about being able to be creative. And probably for the first time, there's so many people that are stuck in that 9-to-5 grind. You were talking about it 5 years ago. You were there, right? Like at the end of the day, like they forget to think about like, who am I and what can I do? Because they have value, right? So what is that when you mentioned the business within themselves? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. So I've got a concept, and I don't know if you got the video on for the viewers, but the board behind me, it says intentional quality output. And so what that concept describes is, if you think about, if everyone that's listening right now, how you're experiencing the pandemic right now, how you're experiencing your world right now is an example of how you have been thinking up until this point, right? Your psychology. And so for those people that are focusing really heavily on what's wrong, what's not going to work, how stressful it all is, it's not that those things aren't real, but you've got to realize that you get what you focus on. And so up until this point, I've been living and breathing this work, and I've been very much into my own self-care, my intentional quality output. So when this happened, yes, I felt the stress and the strain, and our business isn't going to do what I thought it was going to do. But then immediately I go from reaction, which is a human trait, right? We react, and that's great, to response. And the secret that everyone should understand is that the only thing that you have control over in this life is your response to it, nothing else. Because even if the pandemic never happened, there are so many things in life that can throw you off. There are so many things in life that can decide whether your career works or not. But the one thing you have control over is your response. And how you respond will dictate your momentum. It will dictate how fast you bounce back, the decisions you make. And the only difference between the average person and the most successful high-performing people in the world is that those high performers have just failed more than you.
Yep.
And crucially made the right decision and the quick decision to say, right, what can I do now?
I think that last part really resonates with a lot of our listeners and even me in terms of the decision. Mm-hmm. The lack, the paralysis by overanalysis, and just sitting and waiting and thinking like, can I afford to keep the business alive? Or do I just wait until I get this EIDL check or whatever it might be for the COVID-19 business owners that are hopefully, of course, waiting like 1.7 million, business that have gotten funded out of 30 million, less than 5%, right? Out of the
mm-hmm.
entire country. Like,
right.
We know that you should not be depending on that. I
right.
can't wait to get ours for my companies, right? But I'm not depending on it. Like do you know what
we can get?
Right.
We can get so carried away with stats, right?
Yep,
and don't
absolutely.
Get me wrong, I love measuring, right? That's part of being a high performer, is where you can't manage it if we don't measure it. But I think going back to the business of you, before you enter the world and your business and all the stats, is let's just look at what's true, right? What facts do you have about yourself and about the world that are actually true, right? And you'll realize that a lot of the stories in your head aren't true. They're either opinions or they're possibilities, but they're not necessarily true. So if you're going to focus on something, and that focus is going to dictate the decisions that you make every day, why wouldn't you focus on what you can do to make the best outcome happen?
Absolutely. I think that's really, hopefully there's a lot of those out there that are listening that are the pivot world that we're talking about is so relevant to them right now that's a great question to it's kind of a look in the mirror kind of question though, isn't it, James? Like,
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Am I lying to myself? Because it happens. And I was guilty of it years and years ago. And sometimes still assuming that you might have a product or a service that you possibly have to give because you assume you like it versus the market. But I think the looking deep into what you want to do and why you want to do it is definitely exciting for those that are hopefully jumping into the entrepreneur world. Now, given that we have this COVID-19 outbreak and it's affecting obviously entrepreneurs across the world, really. I mean, can you share with us how it's affected your business, James?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the beginning of this year started with, because as well as an individual coach myself, I work with my wife's business as well. And I coached the clients in her business. And at the beginning of the year, we did our first massive standalone event. We worked with an amazing company called Proxy AV. We had all the bells and whistles, the big stage and the screen, and it was just an incredible live event. And this was going to be the year of live events and in person, and we get to see people and not have to speak to them on Zoom all the time. And then what happened, right? The whole business structure was built on live events. We had live retreats planned. The live event was supposed to be coming up this November, another one. And the whole business model was built around that because we especially me being a people person, I wanted to be in touch with people.
Right.
So suddenly that had to change. And actually the lockdown, the official rules of lockdown and what we weren't allowed to do in terms of events, that decision happened about a week before a live retreat that we were going to be running here in Los Angeles with our high-level clients. They were all going to be flying in from across the country and actually one from overseas to do a mastermind over 3 days, right? We're bringing in experts and we're doing training. That was a week before. So we couldn't do it. So what did we do? Well, I think the important lesson we learned is that a pivot doesn't have to be a compromise. This isn't we'll deal with this for now until we can do it later. How about we think, well, what could we do now that's even better, right? So we held the whole 3D event on Zoom. We kept with the schedule. We had coffee breaks. We had lunch breaks. It was from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m, 3 days. We had breakout rooms. We ran it exactly the same. And it was an amazing success because think about all the benefits there. So from a cost perspective, you're not having to worry about catering and you're not having to worry about people's travel plans not working out. From a client's perspective, they can have the comfort of their own home. They could eat what they wanted. There's dietary restrictions. As long as we laid out very clearly what the rules of engagement were, there was a huge amount of support, a huge amount of learning, and the whole thing was recorded for them to be able to watch back at any time they wanted. So I've got to say, even when lockdown finishes and we can live against events again, we're going to do this virtual seminar thing again.
Oh,
because it was incredible.
And the scalability is insane.
So so that's how we've pivoted. And, even now there are things we're not going to be able to do the big live event in November, which is a few hundred people. We're going to have to do it online, but we're going to think of how we can make that amazing. And I tell you what, for anyone here that likes to have guests on to inspire their audience, it's a lot easier to get a really amazing guest on if they get to stay at home rather than come to your event.
What's happening, Life Nation? Michael Levis here. This is a time to do the right thing, not the profitable thing. I'm giving away COVID-19 business strategy sessions for free. I promise to give you my honest advice and coach you on a strategy that I feel would be best for the longevity of your business. I'm not asking you for your money, but in the interest of being able to help as many people as I can, I am asking you to be ready with your 1 to 2 specific questions so we can jump right into it. Go to michaellevis.com/coaching and simply schedule a call on my calendar. That's MIKEOLIVAS.com/coaching. That's right. Hey, I have a podcast. I get it. I've got some great people like yourself, James, on the show. And you're right. If they're able to kind of wake up and knock it out, we do video, but even then, there's some great, we've done some with backwards hats on, like, that's okay. Right. It's all about who you are, and that's
it's real with
us. Yeah, it's real, man. And that's what it's about. So tell us what kind of advice you'd give to those current business owners right now that are having to let people go, close their doors. Like, what are your thoughts to be able to kind of at least get them into either the right mindset or advice specifically on business?
Yeah, first I just want to show a huge amount of encouragement and empathy for those people, because the truth is that, unlike our business model, some businesses it's very hard to pivot and it's very hard to see the woods through the trees. And so I think it's really important to give yourself a lot of love right at this time, and give yourself a lot of compassion. You didn't invite this in, right? And so you're allowed to freak out. You're allowed to feel stressed at this time. It's okay. But how long do you want to feel stressed for? At this time, what you can say to yourself is, as we said earlier, let's figure out what choices we do have. Like, if you could have a list and you could write down all of the things that you do have that exist for you right now, and then relook at the mission statement or the purpose for the reason why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. And what you'll realize about a purpose is that a purpose isn't a product, because there are a million different ways to live your purpose. Whether that's, live events or products or different types of business models, there's a million different ways for you to get to the end of your life, live your legacy and say, this is what I accomplished. And so figure out, reattach to what that purpose is, what that mission really is for you, what you really wanted to achieve. Look at the pieces you do have in place and what options you do have, and who you can bring on to support you in any way you can, and just gather the options. I think it's really important at this point to fact find, gather and get aware of what is available, and then start moving on it. And do what you can. And if you're limited by certain funds, do what you can. one thing we know about like money, which we know is a big thing for people right now, is that money's, and I don't want to sound too woo-woo for your audience, but money's kind of like energy, right? There's a law of exchange in the world. Everything from nature to humans, we exchange services, right? The sun shines, the flowers grow. We create a service, we get money for that. There are other ways to make an exchange that indirectly bring that money in. You've got to think outside the box. And I think that's the opportunity that this pandemic's given us, to think outside of the bubble that we'd created for ourselves, and think about it in a really productive way, and how we can end up creating something that was even better than what we had before.
That's great advice. I think when it comes to our listeners thinking about whether there's those pivots, I think you mentioned something really powerful that I want to kind of really remind everyone that it's okay to stress out a little bit, because who wouldn't, right? Your company you've had for 1, 5, 10, 20 years, revenues like everyone else in the country's businesses have just stopped. Mm-hmm. The majority, of course, of the business. I've had a few people on the show that have it's surprisingly, it's kind of a double-edged sword, and you think oh, poor those guys, but they're too busy. Like their food development or the food distribution industry, they don't know what to do. It's almost over demand, and they can't supply the demand, right? So although it might be great for business, they're not able to supply the demand, and obviously that means operations are going crazy. So I think that on any level, it's okay to kind of just ground yourself and realize okay, yes, but not, like you said, not for long, right? You can't sit there and soak it up in the corner.
Right. For sure. Yeah. And I think if you don't mind me bringing some science into this, I think what's really important to understand about, I said earlier that, how you're experiencing the world right now is a reflection of how you've been thinking. So if you know that to be true, then you'll know that how you think now is going to affect your future thinking. So it is not only an opportunity, but it's actually really, really urgent and important that you use this opportunity to craft how you're going to start thinking. Because from the work that I do in around our autonomic nervous system and stress and how that is held in the body, way beyond our thoughts in our mind, what is happening right now can affect your autonomic nervous system, how much you stay in fight or flight and how much you stay in freeze. And both of those states take a lot more energy than when you are calm. And so it's really important to understand that your best decisions are made when you're in that calm place. And so how you craft the way you think right now will impact your future. And those that succeed, those that rise above all of this, are going to be the ones that are looking upon this period of time with a huge amount of gratitude. Because as all business owners know, right, it's from adversity that we grow, right? No business is just a smooth line. There's a messy part, and the successful people are the people that leverage that messiness and create something beautiful from it.
Before I ask you the last question here, James, where can our listeners find you? I guess, do you have a URL? Do you want to send them over to an Instagram? What's better for you?
Well, I think the easiest place is to send them to my website, which is thegrowthedge.com. But also I have a free community, which I opened up during this pandemic on Facebook, and it's called The Growth Edge. It's on Facebook. You just have to request to join. Any of our listeners can join this. And I go live Monday to Friday, and I give some tips and tricks and insights, just really kind of interesting things. And actually on the website, I've got a freebies page. So if anyone wants to download some freebies that might help them right now, that's on there. So, and just feel free to get in touch.
Absolutely. And the website again?
The Growth Edge.
thegrowthedge.com. And out of all your successes and failures, James, what is the one piece of parting advice that you'd give to the business and life listeners out there today?
Keep going. I think, we're fooling ourselves if we think that life is meant to be this smooth journey. I think that actually the mess is proof that you're in the right place. And it's the same with fear. Adversity is in itself an opportunity. That's why I came up with the Growth Edge, because the Growth Edge is where struggle and opportunity meet. And so if we can just think about our perspectives and how we're viewing the world, I think that, through all the ups and downs of the last 5 years, I had to reinvent myself from a 9-to-5er with a structure given to me, to then being an entrepreneur that had to suddenly deal with P&Ls and balance sheets and understand all these things that I didn't understand. And it was hard and it was stressful. And even now there's the things that freak me out. But you know, the thing that makes a high performer is not that their life is smooth, is that they have figured out how to develop what I call bounce back ability. That's the space between reaction, freak out, and response.
Yep. Absolutely. What is your response out there? Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, James, and dropping your knowledge on us.
You're welcome, my friend. Thank you so much for having me on your amazing show.
Life Nation, you got to remember that in order for things to change, you must change. And in order for things to get better, you must get better. You just got better by hanging out with me, Michael Libas, and the Business and Life Nation. So come back tomorrow because I'm here dropping sound bombs 7 days a week, baby. If you'd like to subscribe, please do, so you can take action and execute. See you tomorrow.